Minnesota surges past the Nebraska team running on empty to win its third straight in the series. Hi, I'm Aaron Muller, and this is episode 14 of the Cobsmacked Podcast. This is a Nebraska Football podcast where we cover the Huskers season and team news as it progresses throughout the year. Every video episode is uploaded to YouTube, and the audio versions can be found on Apple, Google, and Spotify. If you enjoy the content, please consider leaving a like, sharing, following wherever you're listening. It helps me grow the podcast and helps me reach more ears. Before we get into this week's recap, as most of you have probably heard, Eric Shenander, our defensive coordinator, his father passed away on Thursday. He decided to stay with the team and help coach the game on Saturday, but it wasn't expected. It was something that kind of came up as a surprise, and I know it couldn't have been easy for him to not go back and be with his family in Iowa, but as Scott Frost said before the game, when he lost his father last year, that was something that helped him, was to be around his football family, and that's what it is. They spend a ton of time around each other, and Eric Shenander's close with his guys, so I know that probably helped in some ways, but in other ways, I'm sure he would have rather been home with his family. So thoughts and prayers go out to the Shenander family. Just send good vibes their way. Getting into this week's recap, we have the Week 7 matchup against the Minnesota Golden Gophers. The score ended at 23-30 Minnesota. The passing yards for the game for Nebraska was 241 passing, 136 on the ground. Minnesota had 214 in the air and 182 on the ground. So total yards, Nebraska ended with 377 and Minnesota ended with 396. They had 4 more snaps than we did. We ended at 64. They ended at 68. But where the big difference is the time of possession. So we had the ball for essentially 22 minutes and they had it for 38. So I mentioned that coming into the game that was going to be a big area of concern, and they did what they always do. So looking at the defense, though, we had 1 sack and 7 tackles for losses with 2 interceptions. They had 2 sacks and 5 tackles for loss with 0 interceptions. Nebraska did really good about not turning the ball over this game. Special teams wise, we had 1 of 2 for field goals and 4 punts for an average of 48.3 yards per punt. They missed their only field goal attempt, and they also punted it 4 times for 43.3 average yards per punt. First downs, we had 19 to their 22. Time of possession, as I mentioned, 22 to the 38. And the penalties, we both ended at 3 penalties for 25 total yards. We had 1 crucial one that we'll get into, but other than that, penalties didn't really play a big part in the game. So I'm thankful for that as much. So getting into the takeaways from the game, the offensive line strikes again. It's the first thing that's going to jump off. I knew watching the game that was going to be the first thing I wanted to talk about, but I don't like beating a dead horse, but the horse isn't dead yet, so I guess here we are. They gave up 2 sacks and 5 tackles for loss to Minnesota, but Adrian was under pressure all game. So 14 of the 35 dropbacks, he was under pressure, and the worst part about that is that was with Minnesota only blitzing 3 times. So they're getting back to Adrian, they're getting back to the running backs in the backfield with only sending their 4 down linemen. That's not something, that's something that's been consistent with our last few games as well. Nobody has to blitz us anymore. They don't have to blitz us consistently to get pressure because they're able to get it because our offensive line is too leaky. Outside of that, though, so we're going to get to that a little later, but outside of that, they didn't play penalty-wise. They weren't killing us penalty-wise. We had a big 3rd and 5, yes. Bryce Benhart, I believe, got called for a false start, so we had plays drawn up for a 3rd down and a 4th down. We were going to punch it in 2 plays to get 5 yards, but Bryce Benhart got the penalty, so it put us at a 3 and 10, so the plays went out the window, and I think it killed the drive, and I believe we ended up having to punt that drive. That just affects the whole offense. When the offensive line's not able to get pushed, they're not able to protect Adrian. It affects the whole offense. Adrian Martinez played his worst game of the season, probably of his career. I can argue that. I know he's had some games where he's turned it over a bunch, but he just didn't look like the Adrian we've seen this season so far in this game. He went 18 for 33, 241 yards and 1 touchdown, but his execution and his decision-making seemed really slow and didn't seem like he was making the great decisions all the time. Just something was off with him. He had an intentional grounding safety with 4 minutes and 45 seconds left in the game. The score was 16-21. I think he forgot how close he was to the end zone. And then once he realized that his feet were in the end zone and he was going to take a sack, he threw it away. But that doesn't matter. You still take the safety there. So we go from 16-21, where we could potentially go down the field, score a touchdown, and take the lead late, to now it's a 16-23 deficit, and we have to go down the score and score a touchdown just to tie the game now. Something was off there. I don't usually see that from Adrian. Usually if there's pressure like that, and he felt pressure all night, he takes off and runs when he gets the opportunity to, and he didn't do that at all tonight. He had 0 scrambling yards. They only had 2 designed run plays. He wasn't stepping through on his passes. I thought a lot of that had to do with the offensive line letting guys through all the time and him having pressure in his face, but he just wasn't stepping through on his passes, and so a lot of them sailed high. That's been kind of his thing. His big criticism is that he sails them quite a bit, but I thought it was due to offensive line. We'll get into it a little later. I think there might be another reason for that, but he had a lot of opportunities, as I mentioned, to take off and make significant gains. There was particularly one where he dropped back, the pocket kind of wrapped around him. He had time to throw it. There was nobody open though. So there was a big lane to his left to take off and run for like 10 or 15 yards, and he didn't. He threw the ball away. That's not the Adrian we know. Like, if there's an opportunity to go, he goes. He doesn't think about it, and he was overthinking tonight, and I think that there might have been something plaguing him there. Looking elsewhere on the offense, we had Ramir Johnson had a good game going until he went out with a possible head injury. He had 11 carries for 83 yards and 2 touchdowns. The drive that he went out on with the head injury was just a bad series for us on the goal line anyway. Second down, Ramir Johnson runs into a wall. The offensive line didn't stop anybody from getting back there, and he just ran into like 4 Minnesota Gophers and went out with a head injury. The next play, Adrian tries to QB sneak it from the shotgun from a yard out and gets stood up on the goal line. The commentators thought he got in. The radio thought he got in. A lot of guys think he got in, but they called it no touchdown on the field. So when they reviewed it, there was not enough to overturn it because there was a ton of bodies around. You couldn't really see where the ball was. I think he got in, but I mean, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They called it no touchdown. So he gets set up on the half-yard line, essentially. Then they bring Yant in, and Yant shouldn't have been able to plow in for a half yard. Yant trips over absolutely nothing and falls on his face. He didn't hit anybody's feet. He didn't even clip his own feet and kind of stumble that way. He just fell forward. So he got stuffed there. So he turned it over on downs on a goal line. 3 plays to punch it in, 3 bad plays for Nebraska. Austin Allen had a big day through the air, though. Most of it came in the second half. He had 5 receptions for 121 yards and 1 touchdown. Part of that was the best drive of the night. Came a little too late with 2 minutes and 12 seconds left in the game. The score, we got up to 23-30. We went down the field 75 yards in 1 minute. Adrian made 5 for 5 on passing yards with 1 run mixed in there, and we made the score 23-30. So late in the game, we had a drive that should have been earlier in the game. We should have seen this kind of consistency from the team, and that just hurts it even worse because when you see that we were capable of doing it and you just didn't see it the whole rest of the night, it makes you wonder why. What happened in that drive that kind of slipped through every other drive in the game. But that was capped off by Austin Allen catching a nice one in the end zone. Adrian threw it high to him where he could grab it, and he used his frame to come down with it. Outside of that, though, we had 3 straight drives in the second half go down past the Minnesota 35, so we got deep into Minnesota territory. We had the 1 on the goal line, as I mentioned. I believe 1 was on the 7 or the 9, somewhere in there, and then 1 on the 25, and all 3 of those drives ended with no points. We had the 1 on the goal line, got turned over on downs. We missed a field goal. We kept getting into scoring territory, and we just never came away with points, and that was a big factor that played into our loss in this game. Defense, flipping over there, we had a slow start, and missed opportunities really hurt the Black Shirts early on. We allowed Minnesota, as I mentioned, to hold the ball for almost 40 minutes, which is their game. That's their style of play. They hold the ball a lot, and we knew that coming in. But we just weren't able to stop them. Poor penetration on the defensive line added to that. I mentioned one of the keys coming in was to get pressure on Tanner Morgan and to stop the run game, force him to pass it. He passed it, but he didn't have pressure, so he was able to pass it very efficiently. Tanner Morgan went 20 for 24, 209 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did throw 2 picks in the second half, but nobody got back there, so he was able to throw some really good balls. Senior wide receiver Chris Ottman-Bell, somebody else I mentioned in the preview, he had 11 receptions for 103 yards. He went off on the night. He was a veteran guy I mentioned that we were going to have trouble with. He was going to make plays, and he did. I'm pretty sure most of that came in the first half. He didn't really do a whole lot in the second half. They brought in a few different guys to run running back. It's kind of a running back by committee. They had 31 total carries for 178 yards. It was led by junior running back Bryce Williams. He had 17 carries for 127 yards and 1 touchdown. It was a 56-yard long touchdown, kind of sealed the game for them at the end. They were already up by 7. That touchdown, the 56-yard dash, where we just missed. A couple guys missed, and he just had a lane, and he took it 56 yards to the house, so that put them up 2 scores. And we had that late touchdown, brought it in within 1 score again, but it didn't matter. Cam Taylor-Britt, if we're looking at silver linings, had a best game of the season. He had a good game last week. He had a good game this week, even better. So he blew up a trick play for a 12-yard sack on the team. It was the only team sack we got as the black shirts, but it was like a flea flicker or something, and he just wasn't fooled by it at all and snagged the quarterback for a 12-yard loss. He played consistent pass coverage. I believe his guy caught 5 passes total, but it was for a total of 14 yards. So he was very good on pass coverage. He did get his first interception of the season, and it was a beautiful snag. He was able to close in on the ball, close in on the receiver, and make a play, and he grabbed it. Deontay Williams had another interception. In fact, the 2 interceptions came off back-to-back drives for Minnesota opening the second half. So the first 2 drives Minnesota had in the second half, Cam Taylor-Britt came down with 1, Deontay Williams came down with 1, and then after that, they had 4 straight punts, and Nebraska couldn't close the deal. We got within 5 points. They punted it 4 times in a row, so we had 4 opportunities to take the lead, and we came away with no points in any of those 4 drives. The defense did enough to win the game in the second half. The first half, as I mentioned, they got beat early. With Minnesota went up 21 points, and just Nebraska wasn't able to close it in the second half. So the defense did enough to win the game. I was kind of talking about this, that the defense this year has been playing good enough to be a 7-win team currently. The offense has been letting them down. And we'll get into that a little later, how I think that's affecting the psyche on the defensive side of the ball. I'm sure the offense knows that they're the ones kind of that put us down to this 3-win margin right now, but something's got to give. Looking at the special teams, punting was good again this week. Pristup's kind of found his stride at this point. He averaged 48.3 yards per punt again. The return game was at least consistent as well. Oliver Martin was back there again for most of it. He did try to return one. He got 6 yards out of it, but nothing rolled by him that he couldn't have grabbed. There was no mistakes on the punting return side of things. But Connor Culp can't seem to shake his struggles. We again go back to Connor having issues, having confidence issues, something going wrong with him. Watching him on the sidelines, it seemed like something was going on with him. Some people made comments I won't repeat here, but something's going on with our kicker, and it makes you wonder whether they're not able to bring the next guy up to kick field goals. Because at this point, I understand giving a guy chances to regain his confidence and kind of refine his mojo and get him back to where he was last season, but he's not. He's too far gone, I think, at this point, and you need to give the next guy up the opportunity to get some experience in at this point. Similar to the Oklahoma game, he comes in and he nails a 50-yard field goal to start the game, and then he proceeds to miss a point after and a 27-yard chip shot field goal. That's kind of Connor Culp this season. He's either making field goals that are difficult, but he cannot make the ones that are easy, and the point afters are just terrible. You should never miss those. Those are something you practice over and over again as a kicker, and something's just going on with him. And so I think it's time for the next guy up to be able to get in and give it a try. I understand he came in the Oklahoma game and had the point after blocked, but I don't think he was expecting to come in that game. Tell him he's starting this week. Get him the reps that he needs and let him go out there and try to make a difference. It's not like it's going to be any worse. Overall, I felt that, yes, we lost by 1 score in this game, but it felt way worse than that watching it. It did not feel good to watch this Nebraska game. Like, there was points, like Cam Taylor-Britt interception was a big thing. Deontay Williams interception was a big thing. Watching that last drive of the game was good, but the other 40 minutes of football was not fun to watch. It just, Minnesota did what they wanted, and there was nothing we could do about it. The team really struggled as a whole. Both offense and defense struggled as a whole in the first half. The offense struggled to keep drives going the whole game. The defense allowed Minnesota to go up to 21 points early. There was just a distinct lack of energy that Nebraska brought. They've played 3 night games in a row. They've played the last 2 at home with a stadium that's kind of punching energy into them, and they just weren't able to produce their own. And Cam Taylor-Britt and Frost both mentioned it in their post game, that there was a distinct lack of juice on the team, that they noticed it, they addressed it. But Connor Hayden in Corn Crazed on YouTube, he mentioned it too. Like, you shouldn't have to convince your guys to be up for a game. You shouldn't have to convince collegiate athletes to be ready for a game and to get energized for a game. We see football in the fall. The players and the coaches, this is a year-long thing. They work a whole year. They're off-season training, off-season working with coaches, lifting weights, strength training, keeping their bodies in shape, getting ready for the next season. You get 12 games a year to prove that you have improved, to prove that you are good at this game of football. And a lot of guys showed up to this game in Minnesota and just didn't look like they even wanted to play. Like, they were there, they were attempting to play, but they just didn't have energy. They didn't have, like, motivation to do their best, and that was not great to see. That's not something you should have to punch in as a coach, but I mean, that was something that Cam Taylor-Britt and Frost both mentioned, was that there was a lack of it, and they tried to address it, and it just didn't work for some people. I understand too that this is our 8th game coming in, and they coming off the bye week, they had plenty of juice getting the rest that they needed and playing at home. They had plenty of energy from their home side, but we are just drained at this point. As I mentioned, I think we were running on E. I think a lot of guys were just tired and ready to go into the bye week, but you still have to empty the tanks out essentially when you're going into the bye week. Leave everything out there. You get a week off to rest and recuperate. Make sure you don't get beat like we did. And that's just, we weren't able to do it. Mentioning Adrian's poor performance earlier, there was a tweet going around that he might have injured his plant foot or his ankle in the Michigan game. So that last play where Aiden Hutchinson kind of rolled up on him, I don't think it was a dirty play by Aiden. I addressed that in the recap, that I don't think it was dirty. I don't think he was going for his knees, but he did still get rolled up on. Adrian got rolled up on his ankle, so I don't know if that affected it at all, but that might explain why he wasn't stepping through on that foot. It was in pain. But then you have the argument that the backup should have been able to get an opportunity to come in. If Adrian wasn't 100%, and then through the first half you've seen that he wasn't able to get the ground, or like the ground game going, or spark the offense in any way. Yes, we were more effective in the second half, but if he wasn't 100%, the next guy up, Logan Smothers, or whoever you believe gives you the best chance besides Adrian, don't hurt Adrian more. Give somebody else an opportunity to come in and spark the offense. Even if he wasn't significantly injured, he needs help. So whether the backup needs to come in and give him a relief that he needs, or you have the offensive line that's not helping anything at all. As I mentioned, I thought he got in late in the third, but the offensive line didn't help push him in. The running back didn't help get any push there either. The wide receivers weren't helping him. Austin Allen was able to be a good target for him. Samori Toure was targeted 7 times, and he caught 1 pass for 1 yard. He dropped 1. It was catchable, but he had the lowest overall passing grade on the wide receiver room. He's supposed to be your top guy on offense. He came in essentially to replace Wan'Dale Robinson, and he just, the last few games, he's kind of fell off. I haven't seen him much, and some of that might be that Adrian's not able to get to that point in the progression because he's not able to have that much time to throw, but I haven't seen him. Martin and Betts, I don't think, are still 100%. They combined for 27 total snaps. Martin had no catches. Betts did come in for a few completions, and then he did do a running play as well. But the offensive line is the bigger concern for me. Adrian's not able to get the help. If a backup does need to come in at some point, they're going to have to deal with the same offensive line problems. Turner Corcoran keeps getting criticism from me and a lot of people, but it's valid. I mean, I think it's valid there that I understand that these guys need time to improve and you can't do it quickly, but he gets beat all the time in pass protection. After posting a 0 pass grade last week, he scored a 5.1 this week. He's just not improving, and I don't know. I'm not sure what it is that you can do to fix that quickly. What does the win-loss mean, though, for the team? So many people slapped Scott Frost back on the hot seat this week after the loss that we had, because, again, it was a 1-score loss, but it felt worse than that. So many people, you hear the 17 1-score losses. He has poor play calling. What is he thinking? Bad coaching, got out-coached again, that type of thing, which some of those are valid. Some of those you do have to look at it and say, like, Scott Frost is not playing well, coaching well. But I don't think that, we talked about the last week and the week before that I don't think that people realize how far the program slid under Riley and the last few years of Bo Pelini. I don't think people realize the downside of the program, and then the upturn of the Big Ten as a conference. There is no easy games in the Big Ten. But I mean, not just Scott Frost, but Adrian Martinez as well. So many people last week were talking about Adrian Martinez could come back next year and we'd be really good. And can you imagine like what that's going to look like next year and stuff? And then this week they're already talking like, bench him, get him out of here, let him enter the transfer portal. I hope that he doesn't come back next year. That type of thing. Like, we're so tired of seeing Adrian Martinez. Adrian Martinez is a highlight reel on the team. He needs help. He's the guy that can push you over the top, but if he has to do it multiple times in a game, then that's asking too much of anybody. The Husker fan base is just so up and down with each close game, each win, each loss. Like, they're back and forth. They're one extreme to the other. And I understand the frustration there. I understand that when we win, it's great to win, and we should feel that a lot more often. But when we lose, we can't just completely turn on the program and the players and the coaches. Nobody wants this to work more than the players and more than the coaches. As I mentioned, we get to see the games in the fall. Football is a fall thing for us. Football is a lifestyle for these coaches and these players. We're not at practice every day busting our ass. We're not putting sweat and tears and learning how to play, going to specialized coaches, changing our bodies for this game and beating our bodies up for this game. Nobody wants this more than those guys. They're putting their life into the game, and we're just coming and showing up on Saturdays. Nobody wants this more than them. So I think as a fan base, we need to support them as much as they are putting into this program. Yes, we can critique them. Yes, we can see the things that they need to change. But to say that they don't want this, that they're not here, that they're not trying is not accurate at all. The offensive line is still going to be my biggest gripe. I keep going back to it because I don't know what it is. I never had an offensive line like focus as much as I do, but there's no quick fixes here, and that frustrates me because I don't know how to fix it. I don't. We had Teddy Prohaska come in, and in 1 week it was night and day. Like, it was better. I'm not saying all of that improvement was Teddy Prohaska, but we have a lot of young guys, and if Teddy can come in as a true freshman and play the way he played, there's no reason that our other guys on the line that are young can't do the same thing. When he went out, it kind of regressed back to how it has been, and I don't know how to fix that. I don't think you can. I don't think you can fix an offensive line overnight or week to week or even during a bye week. I don't think there's a way to fix that overnight by the next game. So I'm not looking forward to this, especially looking at the rest of the season. So looking forward, we do have a bye week, or as the Eyes on the Big Ten podcast calls it, idle week, which I like that. I like that. Bye week kind of implies that you're not doing anything. Idle week just means you're not playing a game this week. So I kind of like that. So we have an idle week next week, and then Purdue after that. We play Ohio State after that, and then another idle week, and then we play Wisconsin and Iowa to end the season. So that puts us in a very difficult position now. We needed this Minnesota game to kind of have a better chance to get to a bowl game. We have now a must-win against Purdue because we need to win against Purdue, who I might mention just knocked off the number 2 Iowa team this weekend. They went into Iowa and beat them pretty handily, might I add. So we now have to face that Purdue team, and then we have to win 2 of the last 3 against Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Iowa. Wisconsin, Iowa, and Ohio State have the best defensive linemen we might play this year, and that terrifies me going up against our offensive line. That alone might lose us those 3 games, and we need to win 2 of them. 2 of those teams were in the top 10 this week. Iowa did lose. I'm not sure how far they're going to drop down. They were at 2. I can see them still being in the top 10. So we essentially need to knock off 2 top 10 teams to get to a bowl game this year. With the offensive line situation, I do really question Nebraska's chances here to get to a bowl game. I still believe the team has a lot of potential. I still believe a lot that the team's capable of. But with the offensive line, I keep mentioning that a good offensive line leads to a good offense. It might not make your offense great, but at least raises the floor there. Our floor is falling every week. It's falling. So no matter how many playmakers and stuff we have, if the floor keeps falling, we're never going to reach that ceiling. And with a shaky foundation, our offense cannot be consistent. We cannot keep drives going. And I do feel like that alone could lose games for us, and it has been. Jojo Doman keeps saying, or he said that we keep finding ways to lose. So that shows, even if they're not being direct with it, I think that the defense is starting to feel a frustration. As I mentioned, the defense could be a 7-win team. If the whole team played as well as the defense has been playing, we should be a 7-win team. The offenses and the special teams is the reason that we are a 3-win team currently. And that's got to be frustrating for them that they're able to play so well in second halves of games and the offense just cannot put the game away for us. I mean, there's just a lot to get to. We do have the idle week next week, as I mentioned. So that's going to wrap up this week's recap. But with the idle week next week, we won't be doing a preview or a recap of the game because there won't be one. But I do still plan on putting something out that's Husker football related. It might be just a season recap this far, or like positive and negative things that we've seen so far in 2021 season. Things to look forward to next season. Just how brutal the season schedule has been this year. How many good teams we've had to play. And I don't know. If there's any suggestions, you guys can always shoot me a Twitter or tweet at Cobsmacked Pod on Twitter. Otherwise, you can find me there and just chit chat it up. So Remember to like and share the video if you like it. Otherwise, I will see you guys next time. Toodaloo.